live stream the meeting.
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah, it says it here on my screen now. You got it recording.
Well, that's good. And I'll make this bigger here. See if that helps. There. And, I'm going to
You're on YouTube. You need to kill YouTube and just stay in the Zoom.
There's YouTube up there. Yeah. Do we leave YouTube on or take it off?
We're going to try to take it off here, and maybe we'll take it off.
Yeah, you.
Ready? Watch how you do it.
Well, I don't know how you do this.
Okay.
How do we kill this thing?
This is red.
Oh, there it is. There we go.
And I assume we're still recording.
Yeah, we are.
Great.
So if it's recording, should at the bottom of our screen where it says record, it doesn't, it indicates that it's not recording.
So I think we're recording in YouTube, not on Zoom. Is that right?
Yeah, those are Zoom controls, and we're linked into YouTube. So
We're live streaming. Are we still recording? It says live stream.
well, we live stream onto YouTube, which is
It
recorded.
does get recorded.
Tony, that button on the bottom for record is for you to, if you wanted to record yourself on your computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. So I have another question, Mrs.
View mode where we get rid of some of this stuff here.
If I was not part of this committee and I was part of just a Lincolnville resident, and I wanted to listen to this, what would I do? Could I go to, where do I go to listen to this as a third
Go
party?
to YouTube, to the Lincolnville Lakes and Ponds Committee. It should come up.
And it should be real time?
Yeah, should be live on YouTube.
I've never done it live. I've only seen recordings. But this one says it's live, so.
Yeah, it should be live. Okay.
Well, they're always recorded live.
Live and recorded.
Okay, Lise, you could have the minutes reflect that we called the meeting to order at 7:10.
Yeah, I'm not taking notes on that discussion that just happened.
Right, so we just called the meeting to order at 7:10.
Absolutely, there it is.
And let's review the minutes from, I guess you need to record who is present and who is
I've
absent.
I've got that.
Okay. And let's review the minutes from the last meeting.
Date of last meeting, please. 10/9/9.
September.
Okay. Thank you.
So any.
Gary, never mind, I've got it, and I'll check it. Don't look any further, please.
Well, I read it and I didn't see anything. They seem to be quite fine to me.
I had no comments on the notes. Does anybody have any comments?
No,
No comment.
Okay, we will consider them final.
Okay,
I guess the next step is to send them to Dave Kinney as the finalized notes.
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of minutes, I don't know if you saw the email that I sent to you shortly before the meeting.
yes, I
Yes,
did.
I did.
which was Dave Kinney getting back to us with respect to the question of whether or not we need to submit draft minutes to the town. And he included the written guidance for that and said that, yes, it is a requirement that we do that, but he also said that the way in which various committees within town handle that is pretty mixed. So we haven't been doing it, but it is something that is expected. And it probably does make sense if we want to conform with those requirements to send the draft notes as well. So
I
I
had the
think,
same conversation with them,
yes,
with the committee, and decided that the select board really should have meeting minutes for when they're first done as early as possible. Otherwise, it's a month late. It's old news by the time it finally comes to them. So I did, by the way, Tony, figure out how to do a watermark draft across the whole thing, which is an option in Google Docs. So I've been doing that. I'll put a big draft across it, send it along with the approved minutes. The chair does that, sends it to David, and he includes it in the packet of the select board.
okay, so then it would make sense then for both the draft minutes to come to me and the final minutes to come to me, and for me to send them to David.
You already have the approved minutes.
Yes,
So you can declare those approved, and then take the draft minutes that Lee sends you and mark them draft.
Mhm.
And then they can still, I'm not sure what he does with them, but he's careful about what he presents, because everything that goes to him is a public document that can appear on the website. So I use my discretion as a chair to amend those minutes that are given to me before I give them to David as a draft. I just check them.
okay,
Yeah. So you've already started, you can already have the wherewithal to start to amend them to align with what you think is appropriate to share.
yeah, sort of a second draft of the draft.
Okay, so what I do is to send the draft minutes to Gary and the entire committee, and Gary will send them on to Dave Kinney in the future, as well as the final minutes to David Kinney.
Yes,
Okay,
glad we clarified that.
Does that mean that let's take the example of if Lee does these tonight and sends them out in the next day or two, committee members then have an opportunity of changing or amending?
yeah, 2 days.
At the next meeting, that happens at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So the only amending that happens between the drafts and the first time that Dave has his eyes on it is after Gary has looked at them and sends them on.
Right,
Yeah,
but
but-
you know, any of you could send me a personal note to say something is terribly wrong here, this is misrepresented, and I could incorporate that into the draft that I send.
That's
Well,
what,
then how about we say that the draft minutes to be sent to Gary, to the committee, and Gary will send them on to Dave Kinney, say in 2 days later, pending any and changes to be made by or something to the effect of committee has 2 days to make a change.
Yeah, I think that's a good policy. I don't think that your minutes need to reflect that. I think that can be our practice.
Okay,
Because I think it may depart some.
Yeah.
but in a good way,
fine.
just to keep it simple.
Good.
So let's move on to our lake by lake or pond by pond reports. How about starting with Moody Pond?
Moody Pond? Yes. Well, the water's very high, and I would say I don't remember checking it at this particular season last year, but I think it's higher than it was definitely higher. No, it might, it's higher than it normally is. And of course, it's, rained a lot. And I don't see any loons and was wondering if anybody else has seen any loons in the past week or so.
So that'll come up in our reports.
Okay, people will tell, because I was sort of curious about that, whether it was just Moody Pond, because I've seen none, and I've been back for about 4 or 5 days, because I've been away for 3 weeks, so I haven't been observing the pond too closely. So I'd say mostly that the water's high, and I have not been over to the dam, or the outlet rather, to see whether there's been any beaver activity or any dam building. But I'll be getting over there eventually soon.
Thanks, Lise. Coleman Pond?
Water is very high. It's going over the dam, and
It's going through the spillway.
going through the spillway, and the Andrews Brook is moving along nicely. I haven't seen any fish jumping or migrating birds the way I did last month. And it's very quiet, only a canoe or two,
And no loons.
and no loons. That's it, Gary.
Okay,
As
you.
recorder of all of this, do I take the, what is said at the meeting to be recorded, or do I take the actual reports and present them in toto?
I think just taking the actual reports and including them.
Okay,
in their
okay, fine,
totality.
fine. Good.
Pitcher Pond, Rich?
Well, the water's certainly up. I don't think it's a whole lot different than most falls after rains. It is spilling over the dam some, which is normal. Yeah, I did see a sole loon a couple weeks back.
But not recently.
No, not that recently. I haven't been over much though. I had indicated that our board we had a recent board meeting looking at another way to raise money for a fund we're building for some future necessary dam repairs. What that has to do with, and you don't need to write this, Lise, but we have a small piece of property on the lower end of the pond, and it doesn't, it's too small to build on, and it isn't access to the lake. But there's an interest in that property getting bought for a small amount of money, but it will, it'll be a substantial amount toward our fund we're building. So that's been the most recent development. We had a meeting last night to discuss that. I guess that's it.
How big is this piece of property?
I think it's the better part of an acre. I don't have an exact measurement of it, but it does have a swampy area bordering it, and the Cobbtown Road is it leads into the lake. It's between that road and the pond, but again, there's not enough land to actually build there. It's swampy and really can't be used for anything practical. So
So who would buy it, Rich?
Yeah, who would own it?
Well, we have some interest in it from the abutter, so we're moving ahead with that.
Good.
An abutter, people like to either expand or protect the property, so that seems to be the only kind of buyer that would have an interest, so
Yeah.
hopefully that's gonna go through.
So is that related to funding the dam improvements?
Yes,
Okay,
Was that ever considered public access?
no,
No. Who owns it?
our association.
thanks, Rich. Susan?
Yeah.
Norton and McGuinty?
Yes, well, many of the boats and floats were removed from McGuntucket before the recent storm. 2 weekends ago, we got a call that a boat was being dashed against the dock and it was still there. The wind and the waves were swamping this boat, and so we went down with extra bailers, and I think if we hadn't done that, the boat would have gone down. Managed to get the boat bailed out, and he made it across to a safer harbor. Since then, the water's been very calm. It's started to rise. It's still not completely risen. We went out and kayaked this week, and we startled a flock of mallards. There were probably 6 mallards, like 3 pairs, flew off. The last meeting I mentioned that the last E. coli test was being done the next day, and that was done by someone, and those numbers came out fine. It was actually that spot, they call it under the bridge at Drake's store, was down 200 points, which made me wonder if it was a typo in the first place. I mean, it was 257 the last time, this time it was 57, so anyway, all's well at that spot. What's the name of the water body? Mariners?
Missouri Brook.
Missouri Brook.
That's one of the names. Other people call it by other names like Twin Brooks.
Okay, Missouri. So anyway, that's all's well with the E. coli tests, and those are done for the season. We have a neighbor on the lake, still has a styrofoam float. He's well aware. Everyone's now well aware that it's no longer allowed in Camden. He does plan to address that. We took some of the pamphlets to Don's outboard, and Don was very happy to have that. He was also very much aware that they're now outlawed in Camden, and he was happy to have these pamphlets on his counter to make his customers aware of the danger of them.
Great.
I thought those were a good target marketing there. And I do like to bring to our attention tonight that the sign we created for the Phragmites project has a QR code which no longer works. So I think we ought to address that. Cheryl Nevia says she could have it replaced for $25.
But why don't we put it on the agenda for discussion tonight?
Okay.
Turning to Levenseller Pond, I went down there this afternoon. Things seemed really quiet. There are still 2 docks in the water. Both of those are on the Searsmont side. There are a couple of mallard ducks on the far side of the pond, and I heard a kingfisher calling, but otherwise I didn't see any loons. But I did see loons maybe 3 weeks ago, but I haven't seen them since.
Mm.
I'd say the water level is moderately high for fall, but like Rich said, if you've got a wet fall, the amount of water we're seeing is consistent with the fact that we've had a lot of rain.
Mhm.
But beyond that, nothing to report. And how about Hobbs Pond again? We're interested in.
Hobbs Pond, the neighboring pond.
Neighboring
I don't have much to say. I had bailed boats before they sank. And as of, I guess it's 2 weeks now, last time I was there, I didn't see any loons. A bunch of shags seem to have replaced them.
Thanks, Jay. why don't we turn to the issue that Susan brought up, which is funding a replacement for the sign, since the QR code doesn't work any longer. And I guess I'd like to start by asking Jay a question, since Jay's the one who created the great cover for it and really improved it. Just how easy it would be to slip a new foam board sign like the one that's there into the roofed piece that you put together.
I don't really recall, but I'm sure it's not too complicated. We can do it. We have the same thing. We can get it stuck back up there.
So what does it look like, Gary? I don't remember. Does it have a picture of the Phragmites, if I remember correctly? And then so we could use that. And Cheryl is willing to do the picture and a new QR.
It just means put a new QR code in. She'll figure out what the updated QR code is and just stick it on and have it reproduced.
Yeah, so there's not many words on it, but it just talks about what the project is and does. And I guess it would be an opportunity to change anything else that we might want to on the sign. I don't know if the sign calls it a restoration or not, rather than removal. We might want to take a look at that and see if there's some other messaging we might want to include. But it might be a simple job if they still have it on file at the printer to do it just the way it is, but replace the QR code.
So is someone going to go down and look at the sign to determine, or to take a picture and then send it around?
I see people looking at their phones here, because I'll bet.
Somewhere I have a picture of it.
Among us, we have a picture, I'll bet. So hold on just a minute, we'll see what it says.
I don't have a close up on it. Yeah, I don't have a close up.
Well, if we want to take it, I may find it here. We can come back to
Okay,
it.
that's fine. In any case, I think it's something that makes sense to do. And, we ought to do it, especially if Cheryl is offering to do the QR piece of it. I guess we need to see what it is that we would link to, though, with the QR code. So that's another step. It sounds like the page that was there, which I think was a State of Maine page on Phragmites, no longer comes up when people use the QR code. So if it still is on the State of Maine site, it might be worth having it reference that information.
I was a part of that design process, so I don't really know. But so whatever you think is important, for people to know.
So maybe what we can do is take a look at what's there now, and I'll see if I can find a site that would be appropriate to talk about Phragmites, and if there is a State of Maine site, or maybe a Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or some official site that could be referenced, and then we can discuss it at our next meeting and make a decision as to how we want to proceed. But it certainly does make sense. I'm glad, Susan, that you discovered that it doesn't work.
Everything requires maintenance,
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
Gary,
the message on the QR code is to be reviewed at the next meeting.
Yes, that's all you need to say.
so Gary, if you're going to go look at it, we want to, I think, say that this is an ongoing project for a number of years.
Right. Right.
that,
Yeah, so we'll review the actual language and see if it needs adjusting at our next meeting. That makes sense. Okay, I think the main item that we have on the agenda today is how we move forward with the unencapsulated polystyrene issue. At the last meeting, you had mentioned that you would work on a draft letter that the Board of Selectmen might, or I guess it's the select persons. What's the?
We won't know until.
like board.
So it's Selectmen,
Not select men, board.
the select board. Select board. And also the other issue that came up is whether the scope of the letter should just be the unencapsulated polystyrene, or whether it should include other issues related to lakes and ponds, like the Phragmites project, maybe some boat safety issues, have the select board identify or say how important it is that the lakes are maintained, that they're important to the community. And we didn't come to any resolution on that issue. Jay sent me a note one-on-one, which is something that can be done by email, but I inadvertently sent it out to all of you just prior to this meeting. And Jay had said at the beginning of it, he was sending it just to me.
Well,
So-
I only did that because
Yeah.
if you send it to more than one or two people, it becomes part of the official correspondence of the committee, which is supposed to be public. However, if you just have a one-on-one side conversation, you're okay. You know, legally, that's the only reason I restricted the audience.
But I blew all that up by sending it out inadvertently. But I thought, Jay made some good points. And I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at that. My
Yeah,
intent,
Gary, I did read it and I thought he made very good points. Because there's the Phragmites, there are a lot of issues on ponds that it would be good to mention to people, to the residents who live on the pond.
So I thought about that a little more. If there is agreement, I think it might be nice to put together a more comprehensive letter of publication or whatever form it's going to be, and have it ready for the spring season. I don't think there's a rush, but before everybody hits the water in the spring, if we could deliver this list of things about the importance of our lakes and ponds, it might be timely.
in terms of the timing of it, one of the things we had talked about earlier was on the unencapsulated polystyrene, if we did it a little bit earlier, it might make it possible for some people to set up a contract or, order a new float being seen. So I think that maybe if we were to target March or something like that, there would still be some time, but it would be getting into the swing of spring as well. One other thing I wanted to mention about this is that I got a note from Dave Kinney asking us if we were ready, would we want to select a date to make a presentation to the select board? And he identified the next 2 or 3 meetings, but he said no pressure. He just knew that we had an interest in this, and if we wanted it scheduled, he would do that. So he's very receptive to the idea of us briefing the select board on the issue. And this is something we could put to the board as well. Would you want to have it be just about unencapsulated polystyrene, congratulating the town on the progress we've made, but to say that there's still more that needs to be done. But that could be made a part of a more comprehensive letter too, that talks about Phragmites and, with increasing high rainfall events, there's more erosion that gets in and people should be paying attention to. I mean, there are a number of messages that we could have in a letter like this that relate to lakes and ponds.
If it gets
Wouldn't
to,
it be advisable to have a discussion about the polystyrene issue earlier rather than later? Because leaving it to March, it's practically springtime. And if you're going to change your float or you're going to buy a new one or you're going to retrofit it, you should have more time.
Okay, but that's the question. If we were to do it by March, would that be sufficient time? Or
I
not?
would think not. I would think not. I would think to do it as early as possible and to give people time to plan and to accumulate money.
I don't know what Lake City work schedule looks like or how they approach that. I know they do that work, but I'm not sure how.
I'm also thinking about some of the practicalities. We're a committee that meets once a month, and it's going to involve some kind of a meeting with the select board. I guess we'll get some feedback from them, and it will need to be incorporated. So I think it would be hard to actually get out before March.
And what exactly do we want to say? I mean, how do we feel as a committee as to what the next steps on polystyrene? Is it simply just, again, urging people to change, or are we going to be a little bit more forceful?
So I think what the discussion that we had last time, if I were to sum it up, and I'd be very interested in hearing other people's thoughts on it, was that having an ordinance is difficult. And, we know from the mooring committee just how difficult it is. It's an expensive process. It's a long drawn out process. It requires the town hiring legal counsel. It runs into issues of whether or not the town has the resources to actually enforce it if we put it on the books. And I think taking all of that and looking at the progress that we've made to date, the thought would be to continue with educational efforts. And that included things like what Susan did, which was sharing the pamphlet with an audience that would be potentially receptive to it. Talked about having postings on bulletin boards around town. We talked about perhaps contacting a newspaper or contacting Diane about putting something into her column, putting something in the bulletin board. So I think we were talking about sort of stepping up our communications. And one of the central pieces of that would be the letter that would go out from the select board that would note the progress that was made, thank people who have made the change, let people know that we've got to make we'd like to see additional progress as well. But if we're going to go to the effort of getting a letter like that out, if we could include some of the other things that we think are important for the lakes and ponds, and be able to talk about things like invasive species and what we're doing with Phragmites, it's a perfect opportunity.
Phosphorus testing.
Say that once again, please, Lisa.
Phosphorus testing.
Yeah, to do the testing that's been done and do kind of an update on that. I think Susan mentioned that the kinds of things that we might want to include would be the kinds of things that are included in the annual report, but my guess is that the 300 plus lakefront property owners, that just a very small percentage of those people would actually read the town report. So this would be a targeted meeting, a targeted mailing to those people. So my thought is that we need to move ahead as quickly and as deliberately as we can, but I think it would be difficult to get something out before February or March. But I'd like to hear from others.
Well, I like Jay's idea. I agree. I think rather than just hammering away on the polystyrene fund, why not list all these other things? I think the challenge will be to make it succinct enough that people won't get lost and stop reading. You know, if it's going to be a big, long letter, it may not get read. So how to make these really precise points that will be of interest. But I think it's worth including them.
Right. Yeah, even just, I think just not bullet items, but as you say, very succinct about all the various aspects that are being covered, because I'm sure most of the population is not aware of the effort that this committee is putting out, the testing that goes on and monitoring and the Phragmites project. And so it's part informational and part promotional in a certain way to just keep some enthusiasm going for the work that we do.
I wonder, in terms of all the places we could make this public, you know, the town report, a letter from the board, would the McGonagall watershed want to include an article from us in their newsletter? You know, it could be a variety of audiences. Diane O'Brien, it could be the bulletin board, the Google bulletin board. Yeah.
So I think the material that we have in a letter like this could be used for other purposes too.
Right.
And I don't think that this necessarily has to cut off some extra polystyrene awareness. If we have the pamphlets, let's keep distributing them. If we can put them on some bulletin boards, you know, we can still do that as a separate channel of awareness.
Have more been printed? Because we were very low the last time.
There's some in this conference room.
Yes, but how many? How many? I mean, are there 100 or are there 10?
I know that there's under 100 altogether, so if we were to include the pamphlet in the mailing, we'd have to do a new printing run for it. And that'll entail some expense, and we'll have to figure out what that is before we report to the select board.
Do we need to do a printing run just for distributing around the various places around town? How many did you leave at John's outboard?
Only a few. I still
Only
have
a few.
I have like 3. I think we just took 3 there. We probably should.
Before I left, I put one up at the Lincolnville store and at Drake's. Did anyone see it?
No, I didn't.
A minute.
I haven't been to either of those.
There.
No,
I put it by the door at Drake's on the left-hand side of the door.
I didn't see it, but I never look at any of that. So,
Okay. Because we were going to be distributing it, but in order to distribute it, the last time I heard, there weren't enough copies. So we would need to print more.
This is the
So
letter.
the major purpose of this letter to the select board is that it be printed in the annual report and disseminated in other forms. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I think that the letter that would come from the select board would be addressed to all property owners on the lake.
Oh, it's a letter from the select board. We're doing a draft.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's around 300 or so.
So we have to do the draft, of course.
This one went out on June 3rd, 2019. It came from the town of Lincolnville. It's signed by all the select board members, and it went to Lincolnville Lakes and Ponds shorefront property owners.
That was about, polystyrene.
Yeah, probably
Right.
included this flyer, enclosed pamphlet, yeah.
It did, yep.
So Gary, Gary, I think you did a good summation of the discussion around whether to pursue an ordinance or not. You know, the sense was to continue with education. I think including other points, as Jay has described, makes a lot of sense, because this is we don't have many ways of getting out the information about what is going on to try to protect the lakes. And I think that emphasis is terrific. But I don't want to lose sight that our emphasis here is on the polystyrene at this point.
Yeah, me too.
I sort of agree. I think we ought to pick the issue of greatest significance. And kind of, somebody used the word hammer, but stay on that topic in the various outlets that we have, letters, signs, articles, Diane. Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of eliminating it. And it would be nice to see that issue done.
And surveys, that we would continue annual surveys in August.
So I could envision a letter that says, select board wants to get back in touch with lakefront owners that cite the date of this letter, and be able to say that since that time, we've, reduced the number of boats, the number of docks and floats by, I don't know, what was it, 64% or whatever it is. And that's really great. It's really great that people responded in that way, but there's still a ways to go, because we still have another 45 or 50 or whatever it is.
I think
And
it's, yeah.
so just in terms of saying something like that up front, and then follow up with other issues that are related to the lakes and ponds. So that would be one way of doing it.
Yeah,
But the focus would be on the Phragmites.
well, it would be the first,
No,
not for
No,
Phragmites, no.
And
polystyrene.
I don't mean I didn't mean Phragmites, I'm sorry, polystyrene, they begin with P.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
could be, that project being mentioned makes sense. We just don't
Yeah.
have to emphasize it a whole lot.
So if we want to make progress on this a little bit faster, maybe the thing to do is to not actually go to the select board with a draft, but put the issue before them on how inclusive they would want this letter to be, and what its focus should be, or would we brief them? Would we actually want to have a draft letter that, which will take a little bit longer? It'll probably take a cycle of a couple of meetings.
I think it'd be much better if we did the draft and showed it to them and we focused on, polystyrene.
now you mean,
Yes, that's right.
yes.
I
Sorry, I
agree.
thought you said Phragmites.
Well, they both begin with P.
I think it's a better idea to present them a letter than to
Yeah,
ask them-
absolutely, because
than to
they
ask
might,
them. They're not gonna answer our question. We do this and then ask their thoughts.
Yes.
So, Jay?
No, I really see it as almost two distinct efforts. I mean, we can keep up the polystyrene push with another round of this shore owner letter like we did before with a pamphlet, and maybe we need to print some more pamphlets. But I also think it's a good idea to put out the promotional letter in the spring, and it doesn't have to be under the gun of being in time for people to fix their docks, but just to be more broad in its approach about everything that we're doing to protect our resources here. And it would mention polystyrene, but it would mention a bunch of other things too. I mean, I don't think any of the other topics are as pointed as the polystyrene. We wouldn't, the state does the job of the milfoil pretty much. And that just gets a lot of publicity. But the things that we wouldn't put out a pamphlet about the water testing we're doing, but it's good for people to be aware of it.
Absolutely. And
So I
Jay,
see, so I, just to sum up, I see it as two things: the Phragmites direction itself, and then a more promotional letter toward the spring.
You mean the polystyrene issue?
Yes. Yes, you got me. Yeah. Polystyrene.
Sorry, it's catchy.
I do want to say though, that if, we're going to be gearing this informational letter or two to shorefront owners, these other issues you're talking about with invasives and runoff and all this, I mean, we cover that in our newsletter to all our shore owners on Pitcher Pond, and I know Coleman does the same. Every year we're hammering on the same points. So I don't know how much those have to be emphasized. Whether we want to do a PR pitch in terms of what our committee's doing, that might be a little bit different emphasis. But I think all our pond folks are getting enough information about invasives, being careful with all that. With runoff, use of fertilizers on their lawns, those kind of issues, I know we hammer on them a lot in our association newsletters, our meetings, and I would, you do the same on Coleman, right?
yes,
Yeah. So just keep that in mind, in terms of how much information we have to send out to shorefront owners.
I think we should focus on polystyrene.
So I want to make sure I understand Jay's proposal. Jay, was it your thought that there would be two letters that came out from the select board, or just a single letter on polystyrene, and then figure out what it is that we want to communicate more broadly to various audiences, maybe not with a select board letter, but something else, just to understand your.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. A later letter, and as Rich says, maybe the emphasis of it has already been covered, but I'm just thinking more broadly about promoting Lincolnville as its lakes and ponds resources. And I wasn't even thinking that it only had to go to shore owners. I just a PR blitz to get to more broadly covered. That's all.
That might be more helpful, but now you're talking about the general population of the town versus just the shore owners. Yeah.
Right, and if, as you say, the shore owners are already pretty well covered, then that would change the gist and influence of anything that we wanted to do, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's timely to follow up sooner than later about the polystyrene, just so people don't think that Lincolnville is now a safe haven for all of the
Right.
disposed ones from Camden, which we know at least one has been brought over. So, if we don't kind of raise our banner as stewards of the lakes and ponds, it might just seem like, okay, well, just take it out back to Lincolnville. So
It's a good point. Yeah.
Who's drafting this letter?
well, I would suggest that we come to our next meeting with bullet points is what we would like to have in it.
Well, I don't.
You don't agree?
No, I think we're past bullet points. We've got our bullet points, polystyrene and Phragmites.
No, there's a lot more.
No, we're not.
So, okay, let me see if I can sum up again where we may be now. I think we've made some good progress here. I'm hearing that people would like to have a focus on unencapsulated polystyrene, and that focus would take the form of a letter that would be sent from the select board to all lakefront shore owners that talks about the progress that's been made, but that there's still more that needs to be done. And we include a copy of the pamphlet again as part of that letter. I think that bundle is something like a $500 bundle to be able to send those letters out and to make the copies. I think that's approximately what it cost
Really?
last time around. Because if you're sending out 300 letters and you've got to get them printed up, you've got to put stamps on them, it adds up pretty quickly, and getting pamphlets printed out, that many of them, is not inexpensive either. And that would be the focus of our briefing of the select board, to see if they buy into that idea, because it does involve the expenditure of money, but that money is in our budget because we did pay for the doing the E. coli work in response to elevated levels of in Norton Pond, because we really didn't have many this year, so we can make that point. And I think it would probably be good to try to make that happen sooner rather than later. So I guess that means that our next meeting, Lise, you had talked about creating some kind of a draft to that letter. I don't know if that's something you still want to.
Well, not
undertake.
at the moment, but maybe eventually. I just had a death in the family and I'm not into it.
Okay, sorry to hear that, Lise.
So can we reprise this letter of 2019 with the emphasis on, or with just the notes that, they've been banned in McGonagall and just, just more subtle pressure?
Yeah, I think that this was a nice letter. It was just a single page. I think it's great for it to be just a single page, and I'll show it to you folks. I don't know if you can see it or not. You can see sort of how it looks. There's just a couple of paragraphs, and the signatures of the select board members is pretty bold at the bottom, so it looks like a more official kind of communication.
Thank you, Susan. It's okay. Can't see it.
Well, we see the form of it,
Well,
Yeah, read it back to me, please.
So what we're saying is that we take that letter as a template and update it,
And edit it.
edit it.
right, and
with
then.
the improvements we've made, that have been made, yeah.
Yes, that's a big point. What we've done and
Do we
not,
want to task one member of this august committee to do that, or do we each want to do it and bring our suggestions to the next meeting?
Maybe somebody could circulate the letter and we all make suggestions and somebody edits it. And I'd be happy to edit the damn thing if everybody will make some suggestions, and I'll put together what I think is best. Unless somebody else wants to do it.
I think one person could update this. It also seems to me they wouldn't need, it's not the Declaration of Independence. They could put their, they could be more concise with their signatures. That could leave a whole paragraph We could say, our Lakes and Ponds Committee are stewards of these lakes, and are also looking out for, and just list all those things that Jay mentioned. And
Yes.
just, give a little bit of an overview, just in that final paragraph.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So is there anyone who wants to take a stab at working with this draft? Getting in the kinds of points we talked about today? And also circulating this to everybody in the committee to see if they have specific points that they think might be worthy of inclusion, or they could bring those to the meeting too. Either way.
Where do you see, where can one find a copy of this letter?
Well, we need to see the letter.
Well, there's a bunch of them in the conference room. If you go in the conference room, there's bookshelves right as you go into on the right, and they're right there on the right on that shelf.
Well, maybe you could take a picture of what you've got right now and send it to everybody. That would be easier than everybody going in and fussing.
Also,
Or scan it or whatever.
yeah, I could take this home and scan it.
And Gary, what we need to know for the letter is the progress that we've made. And
Right, and I'll send that information out again
yes,
in sort of summary form. It won't be lake by lake, it'll be the bottom line
Overall.
that say that, when we first started this, there were this many floats that had unencapsulated polystyrene. Today we have so many, this is a 64% reduction, but we still have this many more that we need to do. So it would just be some very simple numbers. It wouldn't be any kind of a lake by lake breakdown.
no, I agree with
Okay,
you.
can I just, Susan, are you sending that right now?
Is it okay to send it to everyone?
Sure.
Yes, yeah.
The things I've heard here for the amendments to this letter are, one, the noting of the ban on McGonagall, the progress in the reduction of the polystyrene that has undergone, and a little blurb in the last paragraph about Lakes and Ponds Committee. Are there other things that need to be covered?
Well, I think we want to say that we're going to have an annual survey and that this will be ongoing and that there's no
Annual-
ordinance.
Yeah, annual survey notes and improvement, but not a resolution.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that that's sort of built in, that they would say that, we sent a letter out identifying this issue and this problem. We've been monitoring progress over the past so many years, and we're going to continue to do so. And to date, we've reduced it by 64%. Still more to do, but we're making good progress. So it can be an upbeat letter. It can be a letter where the select board thanks people for what they've accomplished to date.
Yeah, I think.
Got it,
that's good.
Susan. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you mean about the Declaration of Independence. A lot of John Hancocks on there, yeah.
They really are.
They don't need that much room.
Okay.
We are because everybody for this meeting.
Well, we can take a stab at writing this letter.
Yeah, well.
I'm
Lise-
going away. You write the letter.
No. Lise,
What?
Lise,
Yeah.
you offered to do it, but given the death in your family, you may prefer to hand it on.
I do prefer to hand it on. 'Cause it's
Okay.
getting complicated and a lot of,
Sure.
So we can try, Tony and I'll try it.
thank you, thank you.
I
I'm
think it's-
sorry, I have to go away again, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
I think it's better that one or two, I mean, Whitney and I come up with a draft, and then we hack that to pieces in the next meeting, rather than everybody coming up with their own draft. And then it's just a free-for-all. Let's take this that we write, and then we can chop it up as necessary.
That sounds great.
And
Me.
are we going to have our next meeting before Thanksgiving or not? What's that date?
Well, let's take a look at the calendar and see what the fourth Tuesday would be.
Tony's looking.
Fourth Tuesday is the 29th. No, I'm sorry, it's the 22nd.
22nd.
Which
Just
is,
before Thanksgiving.
it's Tuesdays.
So what does everybody's availability look like for the 22nd on Thanksgiving week?
Well, it's a lot better than 4 weeks after that.
Oh,
22nd is possible, yes.
It's fine with me. I'm here.
That should be-
I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay, now if the topics that we want to include in this letter are in the draft minutes, that would make redrafting the letter a bit easier.
Say that again?
If the topics that we want to change and improve in this new letter are included in the draft minutes,
Okay, well, I thought that what you were going to mention were the number of floats that have been replaced, the results of the survey.
Well, that's what Gary's going to send to us.
Right, in other words, the progress that's been
Right.
made and saying that more needs to be done, that that the town is not contemplating an ordinance,
Yeah.
but is expecting everybody to get involved and to make this improvement.
Yeah, I'm not sure we would say the town is not contemplating.
Right.
Talking about continuing our education.
Educational approach.
Don't make us have an ordinance.
okay, well, what we will say will be highly flawed, but give us the basis for a lively conversation on the 22nd.
On the 22nd, right.
Yeah.
It would be great to have a place to start from. I think we just need to keep it as succinct as we can.
Yes.
And the focus is on the polystyrene, and then maybe the last sentence has some mention of Phragmites and other issues.
Yeah. A short paragraph instead of all those big signatures.
Right.
The lakes and ponds and, stewards of the lakes and ponds would, basically just a couple sentences about what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say one, because you better focus on the polystyrene, or you then lose.
The suggestion on the bottom.
Yeah.
The last paragraph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but I heard
No, this
Rich
is
was saying two.
what?
Rich was saying 2 paragraphs, and I thought, oh my gosh.
No.
No.
One short one.
Maybe something
Okay.
at the end that says something like, this is all, talking about the unencapsulated polystyrene, part of our efforts to protect the quality of our lakes and ponds, whether it comes to keeping bacterial levels down or preventing algae blooms or some of those kinds of things. But just talking about how, this is an important resource and it's important for us to take steps like the unencapsulated polystyrene to protect it and kind of bring it in that way so that they know that this isn't the whole story.
Right, like water testing being mentioned as one of them.
Yeah,
Great.
water testing and
Yeah.
invasive aquatic plants surveys.
Yes.
So I think this
We
is-
should
I
keep
think
it
this is
general and
doable.
not have too many metrics in it.
Well, you're good at that, Tony.
Well, I mean, instead of saying we have, 442 residents and 398 rafts and 221 this,
No.
we just say we're improving and
Yes,
we're making progress.
64% progress.
Yeah, whatever it is, because it is a significant amount of progress. So you
Yeah.
can say what it was and what it is now, and we have X number to get rid of, as it were.
So I'll try to give you a succinct sentence that sums up the progress that we've made.
Right.
with Just a couple of numbers.
That's all.
That's right. Good. Gary, you're going to send that to us.
Yes,
Yes?
yes, I'm going to do that.
Good, thank you.
All righty, now we're,
Now you're cooking.
Now we're cooking, it's done.
It's
Okay,
like,
and we're also going to be considering the printing, reprinting of the brochure. That has to be costed out.
yes,
I can read this.
Can you read it?
Um,
you know, I think that we need to probably go back to the company that did it originally. They may even still have the proofs.
Yeah,
for it,
good.
and see what it would cost to. What additional cost.
Now, who's gonna do that?
It'd be nice
Is that
if-
something, that's not something that the town office does, is it?
This isn't printed in the office, is it?
No, it was professionally printed. I think it was that Adventure
Oh,
printing. They may have done the sign too,
oh,
but we could,
Adventure
That's
advertising?
just south of Hannaford.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh.
so
Advertising, ad, something.
I bet Cheryl would remember.
did Cheryl do this?
She did this.
Oh, okay, should remember.
Yeah. Can you talk to Cheryl? Lester?
Yeah, and I'll also follow up on the reprinting the sign.
Okay. Great.
Well, this is short enough, we can just type it out and start over again.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we want to cover this evening?
No?
Oh, we've done.
That's succinct.
I mean, that's enough.
That's enough, yes.
ENUF.
And then we'll see what kind of progress we make in this at our next meeting, and following that, I can schedule something with
Okay.
Dave for us to make a presentation to the select board, and you know, I can make that presentation, but it's always nice to have others here, if people are available for those meetings, just to see that there's support.
Yeah, I think, Gary, I think that's good. If we present the letter and see if there's anything else they want in it, or they like this plan, and that we're thinking about sending out the brochure again. What do they think?
And I think what I would do is sort of a general update on what we've been doing over the last year or so. And just a general report in the lakes and ponds, you know, water quality's been pretty good. We haven't seen any issues with E. coli in any of the ponds, with the exception of a few excursions still, which gives us a rationale for continuing to include that as a budget item for future budgets as well. Let them know how we're doing with the Phragmites stuff. They're gonna have to pay for a new permit again this spring, but that's also in our budget now. But then focus mostly on next steps for unencapsulated polystyrene.
This is in the folder, not in the letter.
So I'm Tony, I'm talking about my presentation to the select board.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
We're not putting all of that in the.
No.
No.
No. Well, this is good. Thank you all.
Yeah. Very good.
And we can note that go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just wondering if you're entertaining a motion to adjourn or not.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion. I'll entertain.
moved.
Second,
Seconded. All in favor?
police disappeared.
We're adjourned at 8:15. Which was about an hour better than last month.
That was long.
Good to see you
Doing
all.
better with the working out of the material, the audio and
Oh, yeah.
and presenting it is much better.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
Yes.
All right, have a good night, all of you. Take care.
Okay.
Yeah,
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.